Giant robots for space combat is a captivating idea that was first explored by Mobile Suit Gundam in the early 80s. Since then, many have tried their hand with these iron giants, each bearing a unique spin on the matter. One of which is MegaMech, Century Gamer's passion project set to revolutionize Roblox's graphics and gameplay. Beginning its development in 2018, the game was developed, polished, and refined for 2 years before officially publishing on May 20th. Featuring a modular construction system with nearly 100 components to try and combine. And that's not even including the variations some can come as, nor the paint colors that provide unique effects. Despite the game's narrow scope that was too centralized on Roblox, it's very similar to War Robots and Mech Arena, effectively acting as a Roblox equivalent to these games just by existing. Arguably, a Roblox equivalent that keeps the player experience in mind, since unlike the aforementioned, paying real money does not yield a significant advantage over others. The game had a peak of 4,000 active players at one point, which is similar to the player counts of The Intruder and Alta Torture near the time this video was published. However, only made possible by the dev team leaning heavily into advertisement. As they spent $2,000 worth of Robux on a daily basis, the player count quickly dwindled due to a lack of player retention and engagement, causing the game to never trigger the Discover page's algorithm. Missing this mark caused a chain reaction of devastating blows to the team that will likely take eternity to brush off. The revenue was so poor, it failed to make back more than a tenth of the $500,000 spent in development and advertising. As the game continues to operate at a loss, it's possible player data and matchmaking will cease in the foreseeable future, leaving only memories at most. How did this happen? Were there any underlying faults in the game design holding it back? I'm zSTALKn, and here we will be taking a look at how MegaMech became a $450k net loss. Let's begin by looking at the stars of the whole show, the mechs, which are indeed mega. Components can be obtained through a variety of ways. Some of these methods grant pre-built components or parts in order to craft one. Every time a component is received, the game will pick a number within a specified range for every stat and ability if applicable. Anything deemed undesirable, with the exception of chipsets, can be recycled where it will be turned into parts for that same component, as well as others of the same type. While this approach encourages getting rid of old or worthless gear, there is no way to directly upgrade anything. The only way to upgrade something, technically speaking, is to seize every opportunity to bring home another copy, and hope that it's better than what already exists. In some cases, this includes having a specific ability out of the 2 or 8 that it could be. So the more abilities that can be chosen, and the higher the stats of what already exists in your inventory, the lower your chances are of succeeding in getting a better version. This is especially bad when it may take 3 months, on average, to get a mobility component that is of the highest rarity in the game, S1. Meaning if a specific S1 is worse than what you already own, and or is not the ability you want, that's 3 months gone with little to no improvement achieved. Sure, recycling that S1 is a valid option, except the parts given for doing so cuts the time from getting the next one by no more than 3 days where it would appear in a shop. Needless to say, it isn't worth doing. And what if it's your very first S1 of that particular model? You're left with no choice but to adapt to the option you didn't want. Sometimes, this ruins an otherwise perfect build that needs specific things to work. Demoralizing defeats through no fault of your own come in many forms here in MegaMech. The simple combat just so happens to be another example of this. Controlling your mech in this game is as complex as most shooters on the Roblox platform. Move in the direction you want to go in respect of where you're looking, and then look where you want to aim. By default, you don't need to have your crosshair directly on something in order to have your shots hit. It just needs to be within this box that every enemy will have. The game will do the rest so long as the box is red. Unless you have trigger bot disabled, in which case you'll have to shoot for yourself. Abilities can be activated by touching them or using their keybind, though some might need you to confirm a target before use. The reason why combat is rather frustrating is not because the mechs are hard to use, it's because of coding faults within the game and data never being received by the outsourced servers from Amazon. To expand, specializations are a layer of weapon upgrades that can inflict stat debuffs or negative effects in some cases. Piercing is the only specialization whose debuff can be removed using either one of the many recovery chipsets or the jamming immunity that outright prevents it. Furthermore, abilities that debuff enemies are also considered negative effects, and can be dealt with in a similar manner as the piercing stat debuff. In other words, every specialization, apart from piercing, is properly registered as a stats debuff, and the only way to remove them is broken. Though even if they were to be fixed, they would need to be buffed to have an immunity to stats debuffs for a certain amount of time, as they would probably just be reapplied immediately after using the chipset's charge. As for data never being received, there is a chance that for any given shot, it will appear to hit the target, but it won't give you a damage number because the server did not register the hit in the first place. Among several shooters, this is referred to as a no-reg, short for no registration. Typically, no-regs happen due to high ping or the server going over its sustainable load, and for this game, it appears to be the latter. That being said, they can still happen in low-entity environments, as seen in this clip with only 2 mechs, the full render of the game's smallest map, and some animations. This makes any weapon that isn't a machine gun risky to use, as a shot that naturally deals high damage could very possibly do absolutely nothing, perhaps several times. Yet, that isn't even the worst part of the game. What's coming next will truly make this game be seen as nothing other than a hellscape brewing with excessive anxiety. In MegaMech, the PvP in this game is skirmish, where the first 8 players that queue up take their mechs 4v4 until there's only one team with tickets left. Your mechs play a bit differently than everywhere else in the name of balancing, with health and defense scaling off a chassis and device weight, and a DPS for each weapon scaling with every point of weight that model has, going with its maximum. The game doesn't tell you this, and this fact has to be hunted down in a wiki page with outdated strategies and dead-end stubs with minimal contribution. The only hint of this within the game is some text at the bottom of the screen that reads, "Mech powers are normalized in skirmish." At specific hours, skirmish enters what's called a ranked window, where the stakes are elevated beyond a unique currency awarded to the winning team. During these windows, your rating also gets put on the line. Rating in this game is a dictator in many of the game's aspects. How much of a unique currency you win for winning skirmishes, however much of it you can earn for that day, what you can purchase with it, mech slots, and raid eligibility. To make things worse, you lose out on some of these things immediately if your rating isn't high enough. And if you don't play ranked skirmish for an entire week, your rating gets dropped down to the nearest 100. The team balancing is by far the primary reason for it being overwhelmingly terrible. It is often argued by the developers that the reason for the games being extremely unbalanced is due to a lack of people playing the game. Although videos uploaded by Kraken suggest the games were one-sided from the very beginning. During skirmish, players are allowed to be in stacks of 2 or 3. Anyone whose mech power is 10,000 higher than the leader won't be shown on their list, but that can be circumvented by actively typing up that player's handle or just being on their friends list. It is possible to team up in this way, regardless if it's a ranked hour or not. A common occurrence in ranked is that the top 3 players in a server would stack together before queuing, with no combination of other people present to match their power. Moreover, this became a necessary tactic for anybody that was over the rating of 1600, because most games from that point on would make your rating advance by only 1 upon winning. Inversely, if you happen to lose so much as a single game, even if you did exceptionally well, it would then cost weeks or even months of progress that's enough to make anyone want to drop the game on the spot. As a result, ranked games are simply a check of 2 things. Are your builds top tier, and is that true for everyone in your team? If one or both of these questions aren't yes, whether you're given an alt throwing the game to boost their main account's rank, feeders diving headfirst with B-tier junk at best, or a simple lack of coordination, you've already lost. And then what? Play again after a defeat, and you'll probably just encounter the same opponents as last time, most likely having the same result, cumulatively doubling your loss. Making the best method to protect your rank, refusing to play. This means less people are going to be queuing, leading to longer queue times amidst the fear of losing it all. With an overtly punishing rank system being so closely tied to most of the game's features, the game itself becomes nothing short of a complete failure. This all begs the question, what do you do with a failure such as this one? Do you radically innovate the game so it's more enjoyable? Accommodate for the declining yet loyal players hoping they last long enough for a rebirth? or perhaps abandon the project altogether and shut it down? Well, regardless of your answer, there's undeniably one thing you shouldn't do. You do not leave the game hanging out to dry and risk what's left on a third-person shooter destined to be outdated in a few months' time. This is exactly what they did with No Squid In-Game. To best describe it, No Squid In-Game is an absolute train wreck of a co-op shooter where you and up to 20 other people scour the map and decimate NPCs for money. This money can then be spent on different weapon skins. That's the entire game. All that being said, it doesn't even come close to scratching the surface on the many issues the game has. To start, let's cover the bots. They seem to intermittently switch between total pushovers and straight up oppressive. As for one moment they wander aimlessly looking like an idiot, and then the moment you shoot them, they instantly snap towards you and land a shot. Thankfully they miss every so often, as most humans do, and aren't laser perfect trackers that some games are guilty of having, although they still cheat by other means. Now to move on to the weapons. Majority of the weapons the game has to offer are wildly unbalanced. 3 of them are as fine as they are, but then you get to everything else. To keep it brief, the DMR does less damage than the pistol, and then the shotgun is able to do twice the damage the sniper can do, all the way up to mid-range. It's no less than an insult to anybody that has fundamental knowledge in gun behavior. Speaking of guns, this is what happens when you try to switch guns on the mobile port of the game. You find a line of Chinese text. This alone is enough to suggest that the makers of MegaMech actually didn't have anything to do with the game outside of being the publisher, like how EA is the publisher for games made by several development studios. This is why the game's atmosphere and theming, a negligent issue at face value, is a reason saved for last. The game's bright colors and cartoon-like objects are nothing like MegaMech's cozy colors and industrial backgrounds, drawing more emphasis on the glows of the mechs. The 2 meaningless pink and blue emblems being plastered throughout the game's only map, the sparse writing that is no more than a single letter, it's almost as if the Squid Game trend was selected in a panic to give some life in a world that is devoid of it. Just why did it never occur to anyone they'd be better off making it part of the MegaMech world? The Nomads, Space Pirates, Olympus Mons, why we have a presence on Mars, or why Citadel, an autonomous warhammer, is the commander of an unknown faction on Mars. All of it is left unexplained, and No Squid In-Game could have been the game to flesh them out. It simply chose not to be, and latched on to whatever was trending during its hasty development, ultimately sealing the fate of MegaMech and the entire studio behind it. As of now, MegaMech is doomed to its last few breaths. Equipment acquisition, stat debuffs, hit registration, and the rank system are all problems that will forever remain problems. The team has no money left, and because of this, there's nobody left to find solutions. Even the message of the day has been abandoned, with it saying Happy Holidays for a year straight. It's only run by timers, RNG, and calculations, all of which are unmanned. Hundreds each month are playing MegaMech for the first time, but at least 95% of them don't stick around for more than a month. Even worse, the ones who do quit each month also happen to include hardcore veterans who have been around for several months, perhaps longer than a year. The intrinsic values of the friends made along the way, as well as the rivalries, aren't enough to give people a sense of welcoming and unity. The extrinsic values overbear that environment as if it's a toxic relationship, with the rank systems forcing you to gamble once a week, the virtually infinite grind for better parts, and possibly the tedious trials that take approximately 2.5 hours to clear 16 tickets. The mechanics of the game were clearly not well thought out, but the team behind it surely had good intentions. Unfortunately, financial constraints forced the game to be dead beyond recovery, and the only thing that can be done is to watch it bleed into nothing. Rest in peace, MegaMech. You lived with honor. It's a shame you won't die with valor. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I'm not currently monetized, but you can help me get there by liking the video, leaving a comment, and checking out some of my other videos. If you're worried you'll miss out on my future uploads, be sure to subscribe and you'll know of them as soon as they're uploaded. This has been zSTALKn, and I hope to catch you in the next one.